This came in from one of the members, which was not fully confirmed, but partially confirmed. We didn't have time, given all that is going on currently. But the IMF, which we've mentioned several times, who blocked the Liberia funds, thugs, closed all banks in Belize in this past week. Just shut them down. And the military came in with guns and escorted all employees out of the bank after they did interviews and were fingerprinted. And they were told that the bank took the money from all the account holders, and any account holder had to have a minimum of $2,000 in their account. Now, she lost her money, as well as some of her friends lost the money. That included 5-figure sums. And the question was asked, is this how the deep state is going to keep going across the world? In some aspects, yes. You don't think the payroll, my payroll, HR diverting funds into other accounts is a one-off. It's not. So that came from first hand from an employee in a bank in Belize in the past week. Once it starts in one place, it will increase. Reports also in the UK of Lloyds banks and its customers having difficulty gaining access to their accounts. Really, you shouldn't be banking with Lloyds anyway. They're one of the ones that have been mentioned regularly in the shows. Why are you still with these banks? Why are you banking with Wells Fargo, Citibank, Bank of America, HSBC? If you're banking with any of them, Barclays, you're leaving yourself wide open for it to be stolen. Oh, they can't do that. They can. They have, and they will. Here's another story about banks. One of the members mentioned his friend going to SunTrust Bank and asking for $18,000 cash to buy a car, only to be told he had to wait 10 days, which is 2 weeks. And yet we just accept this. This is part of the problem. There are two solutions to that problem that person should have done. One, call the police. Anywhere else, someone holding on to your money and not giving it back is called theft. That's the top and bottom line of it. So why do we treat the same issues differently? And two, ask for the manager to come to the desk, write out a cheque, show the manager and say, here is a cheque for X amount. I want you to deposit it in my account now, but I will return and give you the cheque in 10 days' time, and see what the difference is. Works both ways, should it not? Well, clearly it doesn't, because we allow it is why. The person should have said, I want my money now, or I call the police and file charges of theft. Not 10 days. No, they won't. If you call up the credit card or the mortgage and say, I'll pay the mortgage in 10 days after the cut-off date, they'll give you a fine. Why can't we do the same? The guy should have turned around and said, okay, if you're going to wait 10 days, I'm charging you 10% interest per day. So you either give it me now, or I'm going to charge you 10% interest for withholding my money. These people need to be told, not just walk away and go, oh, that's awful. No, tell them it's your money. This is the problem. People forget. Banks don't have any money. They have our money, not theirs. Here's something of significance which may play into a bigger story, which is bubbling behind the scenes at the moment, which may require a special show. But since 1970, North America alone has lost nearly 3 billion birds. This was according to a study which also found significant population declines amongst hundreds of bird species, including those once considered plentiful. Overall, bird populations in the United States and Canada have declined by 29% in the past 50 years. A certain family we've covered before, now under further investigation, and again it involves transferring money that they shouldn't do. And the New York Attorney General's office on Friday said it had tracked about $1 billion in wire transfers by the Sackler family, including through Swiss bank accounts. No surprise there, you know where that's going to. Suggesting that the family tried to shield its wealth as it faced a raft of litigation over its role in the opioid crisis. And the wire transfers are part of a lawsuit against Purdue and individual Sacklers in New York. Letitia James, now the state attorney general, had issued subpoenas last month to 33 financial institutions and investment advisors with ties to the Sacklers in an effort to trace the full measure of the family's wealth. Now, Forbes has estimated the family fortune is worth $13 billion, which is a figure not disputed by the family, but many state attorney generals believe that the family has far more hidden away as a safeguard against a cascade of litigation. Also in sub-intel is something we've covered more than a few times and is now being confirmed. Please take note. James Clapper endorsed many of the things mentioned in the shows in a statement this week, and he made clear that the Internet of Things and the many devices like thermostats, cameras and other appliances that are increasingly connected to the Internet are providing ample opportunity for intelligence agencies to spy on targets and possibly the masses. There's no possibly at all. And he said, and it's a danger that many consumers who buy these products may be wholly unaware of. In the future, he said, intelligence services might use the Internet of Things for identification, surveillance, monitoring, location tracking, and targeting for recruitment, or to gain access to networks or other user credentials. Clapper told a Senate panel as part of his annual assessment of threats against the US. And he's also actually saying something very similar of a major study done at Harvard Berkman Center, released last week. It concluded that the FBI's recent claim that they are going dark, for those of you who can remember the internet intel, you know why. Losing the ability to spy on suspects, they say, because of encryption, which is rubbish. That's not because of encryption. Is largely overblown, mainly because federal agencies have so many other avenues for spying, it said. Encryption, our members, our regular members will know, encryption is an illusion. Encryption was created by the CIA. You don't think they didn't put backdoors in it, do you? There's backdoors in all encryption. A lot of them have been taken away now. So the fact that Harvard mentioned the FBI going dark, they're not the only one either. Five Eyes went blind. And this echoes comments by many surveillance experts who have made clear that rather than going dark, we are actually in the golden age of surveillance. And privacy advocates have known about the potential for government to exploit the Internet of Things for years. Law enforcement agencies have taken notice too, increasingly serving court orders on companies for data they keep that citizens might not even know they are transmitting. Oops. Police have already been asking the Google-owned company Dropcam for footage from cameras inside people's homes meant to keep an eye on their kids. Oops. Fitbit data. That's those Keep Fit watches that people have on their arm, I think, has already been used in court against defendants multiple times. But the potential for these privacy violations has only recently started reaching millions of homes. Of course, Samsung sparked controversy last year after announcing a television that would listen to everything said in the room it's in, and in the fine print literally warned people to not talk about sensitive information in front of the television. I hope people are taking note. All these home securities, fridges, intelligent fridges, and all the other nonsense. Alexa, anyone who's awake with an Alexa is really not that awake. As Robert David Steele said, in a coded way, about open source, quote, public intelligence, he called it. Do you understand that terminology better now? Trump said on Saturday he'd spoken with Benjamin Netanyahu about a possible mutual defence treaty between the two nations. Quite why there wasn't an outrage over that is beyond me. On a move that could bolster the Israeli Prime Minister's re-election bid days before voters go to the polls. Well, we all know what's happened since. Mr. Netanyahu's losing. I'll have more on that later. But Trump said he had a call on Saturday, I think, between Netanyahu to discuss the possibility of moving forward with a mutual defence treaty that would further anchor the tremendous alliance between our two countries. I don't think, no, best not. And he added that he looked forward to continuing discussions later this month on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, which Mr. Netanyahu's not attending. And Trump's tweet appeared aimed at buttering up Mr. Netanyahu's efforts to remain in power by showcasing his close ties to the White House. When this article was put in, opinion polls predict a close race. Well, Mr. Netanyahu is actually losing. But some Israeli officials have promoted the idea of building on Netanyahu's strong ties to the Trump administration by forging a new defence treaty with the US. focused especially on guarantees of assistance in any conflict with Iran. So you know what would happen there? They would attack Iran, and then we would have to go to war with Iran. That's what they're doing. Also, that came up this week, which again, for those of you with long memories, or long hair anyway, we covered about certain spying that was going on, not around, but inside the White House, inside NSA, inside CIA, inside FBI, and then also inside the Department of Homeland Security. But it's now being brought up that Israeli spies may have planted cell phone eavesdropping devices near the White House. No, inside, like in the desk, and other sensitive locations around Washington D.C., according to a recent report. Now, the Israeli PM denies this, well, he would, and the devices commonly known as Stingrays were first discovered by the Department of Homeland Security in 2018. Now, they weren't discovered by the Department of Homeland Security at all. They were discovered by the team, and they notified the Department of Homeland Security. And they can trick cell phone towers into revealing location data and other identifying information, as well as the content of phone calls. And they were likely planted to listen in on the communications of President Donald Trump and his closest aides, according to the official. And it's said, while it isn't clear whether the eavesdropping operation was successful, it was. And it wasn't dotted around Washington. Like I said, it was inside the buildings. A former senior intelligence official said it was pretty clear that the Israelis were responsible. And yet you never hear, not that I want it like, but let's launch war on Israel because they're spying on us. You know, we launched war on Iraq, even though they never attacked us. This is far from the first of its kind either. Israeli spying operations targeting the United States have been a constant nuisance for American intelligence agencies over decades, with Washington even naming the country as a top espionage threat, according to documents leaked by Mr. Snowden. Edward Snowden. Where are we next? Let's skip that one. The ozone hole over Antarctica this year is one of the smallest seen in 3 decades, according to scientists. Oh, that'll upset the climate change people. Observations of the gas's depletion high in the atmosphere demonstrated that it hasn't opened up in 2019 in the way it normally does. I wonder why. Perhaps it's not in the same place. And the EU's Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service says it's currently well under half the area usually seen in mid-September. And listen closely, the hole is off-centre and far from the pole. I wonder why. UK is running fear campaigns at the moment, being run by the police and particularly the criminal Red Cross, both of which are associated with rogue Mason and Templar groups, I might add, are telling people to have bug-out bags in preparedness. For what? They won't state what they are preparing for. And in the illustration of the bag, it included a pen, notepad, phone charger, battery pack, flashlight, radio, first aid kit, batteries, whistle, personal toiletries, seasonal clothing, food and water, and an emergency plan. Good luck with getting all that in a backpack. But how can you have an emergency plan if you don't know what the emergency is? Perhaps they should be tell the truth. So Greta Thunberg, who we mentioned earlier, the child prodigy with the elite family background, who has charmed the world on climate change and how people should pay for it, now reveals to the world that we must save the banks. Yeah, right. People have to understand this kid is being used as a tool for the old order. Their new order wants rid of all the banks. I want to make that clear. The new order wants rid of all the banks in a decentralised Asian program. That's what Libra and that package was telling you. Which, getting rid of the old banks is fine by me to a point. We never needed banks to begin with. That's the key. It was just convenient. That word again. It'll come up later. But what are they replacing it with is the key. That's what people have to be concerned with. And where are the think tanks of how to replace the millions of workers who rely on banks for their wages? What will happen to all the skyscrapers in many towns? Will it be left to rot? Repurposed? Or 9/11? Where's the future thinking on it? And it's this lack of future thinking that disturbs me more than most. To remove something, you have to replace it with something else. And that something else has to be something better for real progression. They're not telling you what they're going to replace it with. Well, they've told you what they're going to replace it with, but what they're not telling you is what are they going to do with all those bank buildings in every town and cities? Where are they going to place the staff? Because there's not going to be a bank. A machine is going to do all of their jobs with fresh air tokens if they get their way. Do the people who are promoting this Bitcoin really understand what you're promoting? Clearly not. And what Greta needs to understand is it was the banks who created the problems on this planet to begin with, not climate change. Climate change is a money marketing scheme to make people pay for their other programs, pure and simple. They know they're running out of funds. They'll come up with programs that the people must pay into, and they keep running. But the question remains is, with all their collection of global funds, is why hasn't someone asked, why haven't the UN paid for climate change? Why haven't the 1% who have the funds, not as much as they used to, given they're responsible for the rape of this planet, why aren't they paying for it? Because I can guarantee if a rule came out that the 1% had to pay for climate change, that proposal will go in the trash can pretty fast. Anyone else notice the heavy promotion of the Red Cross? It's all over the TV. Seems every time I turn it on, which is not often. And in particular the Weather Channel, or better known as the Fearport Channel, who spent the last few weeks or so highlighting the Red Cross and how everyone should donate to them. Why just them? There are hundreds, if not thousands, of philanthropic organisations who would love funds to actually go and help, not hinder, not steal children, not interfere with children either? Why is it always that one group? That same group who has a detailed criminal background that anyone can find with a simple internet search within 5 minutes.